So I started a local newsletter that makes me a little bit of money. Now, how in the world did this happen? Well, it's actually by an accident. This was not intended. It was a weird experiment. I was super curious and it worked out. And I want to tell you how in the world we got here a little over 18 months ago. So, um, I moved to this town maybe a few years ago. That's when it started, and I don't know as the town very well or as many places, right? Because I'm very much a homely, kind of introvert type. Anyway, when I found out that there's all these, there's comic book stores and there's a bunch of cons in the area and all these other events, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And what I noticed is that people on this side of town didn't know about the stuff on that side of town, and people at this side of town didn't know that all this other cool stuff was happening. And I was like, how do you guys like the same things and do not know that this thing is happening maybe a half a mile away from you that weekend? I thought that was kind of weird. And maybe that's because it's the way I play out coming from New York City originally, where if I lived in the Bronx, I knew some of the events of anything nerdom wise in the Bronx for the most part. I would also know some of the nerdom things that happen in like Harlem or something like that. So I found it really strange that being in also a very big city, that would be different. But lo and behold, it is different. So I was like, okay, well, I was like, you know what? Wouldn't it be interesting if maybe I had like a digest or something that let other people who were into the same things, they like their anime conventions, they like their Ren Fest, they like their comic book conventions. If there was a place where everybody can go and kind of see all the events that are happening, and then they can make a decision where they go. Because my thing is, most of the people that I've met that I've kind of, vibe with in terms of the kind of cool stuff I like, I like my Lego. I was like, how am I going to find other Lego fans if they're not going to be at the events because they don't know the event is happening? So I figured, wouldn't it be interesting? Maybe if, I can have like a digest or something that goes out and just lets people know, hey, this anime convention is happening this weekend, or a group of us getting together and we're going to be building out some Legos here, something like that to let the folks know in the city that, hey, if you're an adult nerd like me and you like these things over here, that there's a place for you to go to meet other people to go. So it was supposed to be something as a way of one, getting me to know other nerds who like the things that I like as an adult, as well as bringing kind of folks together to actually go outside. Because yes, I'm an introvert. Yes, I like to be in my house. Yes, I talk to people on Discord, all the other things and all that other good stuff. But there is something to going to places and seeing and being around people who like the same things that you like. And I just wanted to bring a little bit more of that community feeling, get to know some people locally, get to hang out with some book readers, with some comic book folks, find some more Lego folks and Star Wars fans like myself, and just hang out and get to know people, right? That's how you build relationships, right? And so that was kind of like, I don't even know if this is going to work. Like, I figured when I started, you know what, I'm probably only going to get like maybe 500, maybe 1,000 if I'm lucky people to join this thing who might be interested. But even if it was like a few hundred people, I figured, cool, that'll be enough. I meet some people, we have, a good time, build relationships with each other as adult nerds, because sometimes that's really hard, especially when you're introverted like me. And that's what I thought I was doing, just like a cool thing. Bring some people together. We have different interests or very shared interests, and there's a place to go and there's people hosting things. That was like the whole thing. I thought I'd be lucky to get 500, maybe 1,000 people doing this thing. Cool. Well, well. This is what happened. We're a little over 18 months or around that standpoint as of this moment. And I have over 4,600 people on that newsletter. That's right. I have over 4,600 people on this newsletter as a subscriber. You, much more than I thought I would get. I just thought that it would be a stretch for me to get 1,000 folks who would even be interested in something like this. Because when it comes to local newsletters, people tend to do local newsletters that are around like general news events, right? They tend to do that. General news events like, hey, some place got robbed, this place open, that kind of stuff, right? And this was a different newsletter because it was specifically centered around adult nerds looking for things to do in and around the Houston area. That's what it was. It was something that me creating a space that was convenient for people to know what was going on in and around Houston, and that us adult nerds can find each other or discover places we haven't been before and create community in person. And I figured maybe a few hundred people, because after all, that's what I figured. Instead, we've grown to over 4,000 people. And I think that's freaking amazing. And it blows my mind because the way things are going, we're going to hit 5,000 soon. And yeah, we might hit 6,000, and it's crazy to me because I don't think maybe a few hundred people, right? This is in New York City. Yes, it's Houston, it's a large metropolitan area. Yes, there's Sugar Land and there's other places around here. Yes, there's a lot of cons, but not everybody's into, wanting to know about these things, at least in my opinion, in that particular way. Because I don't just mention the big con. It's not a newsletter that just talks about the comic book conventions or the anime conventions or the different Ren Fests. I talk about different things. For example, I mention some cool exhibits at the different museums. I've mentioned some shows like Drunk Shakespeare that comes into town and does a few shows before they move on to the next one. I mentioned the minifigure stores, the Lego minifigure stores that are in a couple of places. In Sugar, I think one's in Sugar Land and one is another place. I mentioned those things. I mentioned the meetups of people, of some of us who have book clubs. So it's not just the big conventions like, oh, it's Comic Palooza or this thing. I mentioned small events that most people would consider insignificant. That is just, hey, a couple of people who are going to play D&D. We're not even at one of the comic book stores. I mentioned some events that happen at the game stores and comic book stores. I'm not mentioning always gigantic events, which if I was just mentioning gigantic events, yeah. But no, I mentioned small things, things that maybe people wouldn't consider nerdy. Now, I consider nerdy things that you are really into. So I mentioned science things. I mentioned book fairs. I mentioned events where the children are putting on, a science symposium, which is an event I mentioned last year that actually got a bunch of people in the newsletter to actually go and support the kids, which was incredible. And I didn't expect that many people to even care about those little tiny things, because the whole purpose of the newsletter was for people to know about them and to encourage people to do something. Just don't sit in your house. As a nerd, there are other nerds like you. Maybe you're into going to the botanical garden, or maybe you're into going to the zoo, or maybe you're really into exploring the planetarium, or maybe there's an anime convention, or someone is doing a book reading of this particular type of book, like you love ghost stories or something like that, or just to put spotlight on some of our local creatives, because we have a lot of local creatives here in Houston and the adjacent areas too. And it was just for people to kind of explore, take a chance. So there's big events and small events to find your people, to create the connection. And for me to go out and be more encouraged to go out and interact with folks and create connections. Because as introverts, we could, we like our solitary. And I just wanted to create that place for that to happen. And I didn't think that a few thousand people would be interested in that. I thought, maybe a few hundred, and that's it. And so it's been incredible that this has blown up to be so big. And I can say, in terms of the local newsletter media, I'm probably very proud of this project. I'm glad to see it go. But in terms of local newsletter media, this is one of those newsletters that probably, if you wanted to start something similar, most people, if you're looking to make a lot of money, people will probably discourage you from it because of the perception of a newsletter that targets people who like to play with stuff like this or like to play games, right? There's a perception that goes out in people's minds where local businesses don't want to buy ad space from you because they figure you got a whole bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds on your newsletter, when that's not the case. The average age of people on my newsletter is 35 to 55 on my newsletter. And What I will say is that yes, the newsletter is monetized. I do make some money off the newsletter, not as much as we could be making, and we'll be working more on further monetizing the newsletter this year. But even with the little effort, because I have other things that I do, I have this newsletter is monetized. I do make money off this newsletter. Is it a significant amount of money? No. Can I scale it? Yes. We're in a process of, filling up the ad space that's available, which is trying to communicate the value of, once again, they think it's a bunch of 15 and 16-year-olds in this newsletter, and that is not the case. The average age of my folks in my newsletter is about 35 right now, and most of our people scale some between in their 30s all the way up to, I think the oldest person I have, oldest group of people in my newsletter, because I've counted, is in their mid 60s. So a nice healthy range of folks in there who buy services, like people own houses, they have roof problems, they want their teeth cleaned, they want their house cleaned. So the newsletter provides those spaces, and having to communicate or knowing how to communicate the value of being in front of over 4,000 people twice a week, because I send my newsletter out twice a week, is something that if you decided to start your own newsletter and it's going to be a local newsletter, you're going to have to learn how to do. It probably will be easier if you started a newsletter that talked about the general events in the area, unless you're doing a B2B newsletter. My newsletter is B2C, meaning we're business to regular consumers and not business to business. But yes, the newsletter is making money. Are we going to make more money off this newsletter? Absolutely. But there's so many people who start newsletters and they don't make any money. It's not generating anything. Not ads, not people buying space, not selling courses, anything. But I can say proudly that no, this newsletter is making money. And we're getting people asking now to put their ads in there, which is absolutely great. I have a dental office who has been consistent in spending money with us every week on ads, which is freaking amazing. And we have more people coming on board. So yes, I accidentally built this newsletter this big. I didn't think people would want to be on it. It was kind of a personal project first, and it's grown to something that is quite amazing. I think it's making a difference in the community. But yes, it is making money. And I'm going to be sharing more of how we're continuing to scale that newsletter, because getting people doesn't seem to be the problem. It's more of making sure that we properly communicate the value of being in front of our particular audience on this newsletter. So I'll be sharing some more of that journey. But yeah, this thing is making money. And so if you are interested in starting a local newsletter, or you're interested in creating a side hustle that doesn't necessarily take a whole bunch of time, that is kind of more easygoing, then continue to watch us and make sure you subscribe on the channel so that you can follow the journey, the pitfalls, the good, bad, ugly, so that you can launch a newsletter successfully and get it monetized successfully for you. Now, once again, quote, I have a specialized newsletter. And while it's a cool niche, it is a little difficult sometimes to communicate the value to people, because they believe that it is a newsletter full of 15 and 16-year-olds. So hopefully you won't go through that, because you'll be smart enough to be like, you know what, I'm going to have a newsletter with general events so that I don't have to worry about what I go through explaining the value of the newsletter. But yeah, we are monetized. It's an amazing journey going in. I'm glad that I actually decided to do it. Didn't expect for it to grow like this. And now you'll get to see more and more how this kind of works out. So if you have questions, make sure you comment below, but also do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. I would love to continue to share this journey with you out there. So maybe you can start your own profitable local newsletter and make some money while making a difference in your community by bringing people together.